All right, thank you very much indeed for staying with us. It's still News Hub, and we're turning our attention now to the general elections in the United States of America. Voting has commenced, early voting have commenced as we speak. A lot of people, like I said before, over 76 million have already voted as we speak. And you can't deny the fact that there's a huge following, for the democracy, for governance, and for elections in the U.S. from Nigerians. I remember some point in this country, some Nigerians were actually mobilizing funds, mobilizing people, conducting fundraising to support a particular candidate. I think it was either Barack Obama,
Obama, yes.
At the time. That tells you the interest Nigerians have. And that's also understandable, actually.
Because we are our people there. Many of them are still raising up their hands. They're doing aduro and what have you, seeking asylum in English, so to speak. And a lot of them, the major issues that really will concern electorates in this election will range from immigration to economy. You also want to talk about abortion, which many people are like, are you talking about that in Africa? Why should we be discussing abortion? It's a sin. But America is a liberal state, and so one of those big issues that we want to talk about today on the show.
All right, we have joining us all the way from the United States of America, Dr. Aderonke Kujore, who is an American citizen and a voter, and I'm told that she's voted already. Dr. Kujore, good morning, and thank you for joining us on News Up today.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
All right, we also have joined us as well to have this conversation this morning, Dr. Ademola Adedeji, who is a foreign relations expert. Dr. Adedeji, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. Let me start with, Shewo, if you don't mind. Let me start with Dr. Kujore. I'm liking this part about, early polls. I imagine, are we really going to get there someday in Nigeria when, you can just, cast your ballot as early as possible and then just, look on and just watch proceedings and see how everything is going? Tell us about it.
I'm hopeful that we'll get there. It might take us a while because we need law and order to be able to get there, consistent law and order to be able to get there. But I'm hopeful that someday in the future it will happen. I think in the United States where it happens, it's definitely a privilege that many of us enjoy. It allows us to go in and, I can say that when I went in, I spent less than 10 minutes at a very busy, in a very busy neighborhood. I went in the middle of the week, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that there were absolutely no lines. I picked up my information, walked to the ballot, cast my vote, and was out literally in less than 15 minutes. So it's a beautiful privilege, and many of us, even in the United States, do not take it for granted. You have people volunteering to make it all happen, and it's very secure, and you feel very confident in the process. You get a chance to actually watch your ballot go in to an electronic system, and you can see that it's gone in, it's been received, and the numbers are counted. So it will take us a while, but I'm hopeful that someday, with the level of intellect that we have in Nigeria, we'll hopefully get there.
Very interesting. We have our next guest, the second guest, really joining us from Germany, but he pays attention to elections across the world, especially this one in America, Dr. Ademola Adedeji. Let's talk about this. The build up to this election, holding tomorrow, that should climax tomorrow, that's Tuesday, 5th of November, 2024, had been something that called for attention because of those that are vying under the two main political parties in the United States. What have you seen so far? Are you rooting for any of the candidates? I'm saying any because there are more than two political parties in the United States, but people don't know.
Thank you. That is true. Thank you for the question. Yes, we are watching closely. Yes, recently when I was actually conducting this research, trying to get some information about the U.S. election, I found out that the niece of Vice President Kamala Harris is as a Nigerian father, the husband of the niece, as a Nigerian father, and I was surprised. I said, Nigerians are everywhere. So, and that made me definitely to move towards the Democrats, and there are many factors that are raised in the election. And when we talk about, issue about migration, is what we are all concerned about. We are migrants, and definitely we tend to move closer to a party that favors us. And before we join the major topics, which are very crucial today, in building up to this election, it's important to say also from Europe, the perspective through which we see this election is different a little from the way they see it in the United States, because Europeans have a different, perspective. They are scared about some things. They favor the Democrats, and there are many reasons for that. Maybe by the time we, during the course of the discussion, we might go more into that.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Dr. Adedeji. I like the foundation that you have laid. Let's again, because our focus is the impact of these elections on Africa. You've talked about some of the issues on the front burner: migration, healthcare, and of course, economy is big in the conversation. Which of them do you think has been talking sufficiently about relations with Africa and how Africa, can, connect better with the U.S.?
The issue concerning Africa is a very difficult one from my perspective, because we have not really been engaged more by the United States. President Biden has not gone to Africa until now. He's planning to go in December to Angola. We are not sure whether he's going to make it. Vice President Kamala has been there. The Foreign Secretary has been there, Mr. Anthony Blinken. And we have not really been carried along much when it comes to, African-U.S. relation. We had this summit the other time in 2022, I believe, and the African leaders were hosted well. It was not about that. It's more about the importance of Africa in world politics. I believe the United States is not yet taking us serious, or we have not also positioned ourselves well to be taken serious. We are talking also about this economic integration of the African countries into the American market. We have this AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act, which was legislated in 2000. There are some countries that benefited from it. There are many countries that have not benefited from it, from various African countries. Nigeria is not really benefiting from it, because they have about 6,500 products that could be imported from African countries to the US through this legislation alone. And agriculture is one of them. And we all know the issues we have with agricultural products, even within Nigeria itself. So not even to talk of export, There are other countries like South Africa, Lesotho, Kenya, Ethiopia, Madagascar, Mauritania that benefited from this AGOA. But Nigeria is not yet benefiting from it. Definitely, we are the largest democracy in Africa, but our democracy is still not yet it's not yet where it's supposed to be.
All right.
These are some of the factors that are hindering us as well. And to be also to say one fact, I was reading it that we get about $1 billion in aid from the United States every year. I didn't know that. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. I don't know how they calculate that. Maybe when they help us militarily, that is calculated as well.
All right.
And yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ade. Let's go to Aderonke at the moment. Before we deepen this conversation around the impact for Africa, for Nigeria, Dr. Aderonke, let's talk about the main issues regards to this election. It's no gain saying that it's very open. We all watched build up to what tomorrow will hold. Of all the major issues that are in contention for the next occupant of the White House, which of them really tops the reason why people might tilt the way of the Democrats or the Republicans?
Sure, thank you. I think in the U.S. here, it's two major issues. It's the economy and it's women's issues, the issue of abortion rights across the country. So those are the two big stakes on the table. And unfortunately, there's a lot of miseducation, and the miseducation is driving people to lean in a side that really is going to be difficult for the entire world, not just the US. When you think about the two candidates and the options that we have, I am not going to be shy about this, because this is a high stakes issue for me as a woman, as a graduate of Howard University, as a member of the Divine Nine. It's a high stakes issue for us in Nigeria and across the world. When you look at the two candidates, I think it is very clear that one of them is less risky than the other. It is very clear that one of them is more qualified than the other. It is very clear that one of them has the interests of both Americans and people around the world more significantly than the other. And so, and it's beautiful to see Kamala's picture up there, because if we make the wrong decision here, the impacts could be very could be very high, both locally within the US and also across the globe. That being said, as we think about the economics and also women's issues in the United States, I think it's important to note that generally over the years, Africa has not been a top priority on the agenda of the United States government. It's typically always an afterthought. That being said, the one thing that we may consider the United States looking at, depending on who ends up in office, is this issue of global trade and the trade war against China, really for global dominance, more so than any African interest. So that's the one thing that we may consider. But again, it's really an afterthought. There's a lot on the table from a US perspective, and hopefully it doesn't go down south for us across the world.
All right, Dr. Kujore, I'd like to stay with you one more time just before we switch. Looking at the circumstances that threw up the candidate of the Democratic Party, would you say that Americans are indeed ready for a female president?
We don't have a choice. It's almost like childbirth, or a woman getting pregnant. Oftentimes you don't know, you may not be ready, but when it comes, and you've got to do what you've got to do. And I think that's where America is right now. Obviously, when you look back a few years ago and we saw the situation with my dear friend, Hillary, it was clear that America wasn't ready. And there was a huge conversation to be had. But now that we have experience behind us, we don't have a choice. We really have to make a decision that will not put the country, our people, our women, our African Americans, our Black people in jeopardy. And this is really high stakes. I think, as we watched the former President Trump during his last running, it was not a safe place for a lot of people. So having that emboldened is going to be a very challenging situation for many people. And that's what's at stakes for us right now. It's a mistake that cannot be made. I think ready or not, here we come. We've got to do it. And we've got to make sure that the boat is not shaking. We need steady right now. And we need women to be at the forefront of the conversation, because otherwise it could be a real mess when you think about abortion rights.
I think I know who you voted for already, right? I'm not really hearing.
Undoubtedly so. It's Kamala Harris, for the record.
It's very obvious, very easy. All right, I'll come back to you in just a moment. Dr. Aderonke, let's talk about immigration and what these two main candidates in the U.S. election are putting on the table. Whose deal would you go for as an African?
That's a very good question. I mean, definitely, I will go for Vice President Kamala Harris. I will go for the Democrats. And it has a lot to do with the rhetorics, the hate speeches, that President Trump, the former president of the United States, has put up in the last couple of weeks, months, calling immigrants criminals. You know, it's unbelievable. To be honest with you, if somebody does that kind of campaign in Europe, it might be difficult for such person to be elected. I'm wondering how, you know, it's a threatening situation. How President Donald Trump is really making hate speeches. They hate cats. Immigrants hate cats. Immigrants are criminals. The criminality in the United States has gone up more than anywhere in the world. Because other countries of the world are shipping criminals to the United States. The rhetoric is very important to keep note of what is coming out of political leaders, because people are listening to this, and it's going to heighten tension in the United States, also in other parts of the world, you know. And as an immigrant myself, definitely I will go for a more moderate, softer political party that is going to recognize me, you know, as a human being, as a competent person within the American system. If outside the American system, I will want somebody that will recognize Africa as an African. And you know, we have a lot of professionals like Dr. Kujore in the United States. We have many like that, you know, who actually could be threatened if President Trump continues with this level of rhetoric. It's very threatening.
Very much indeed. Let me go back to Dr. Kujore. I'm thinking and, you know, flashing my mind back to when Hillary Clinton contested the elections. She had about 2 million more popular votes, you know, but, you know, she couldn't become president because of the college votes. Do you see that kind of scenario playing out again?
I'm hopeful it doesn't play out. Obviously, we've learned from history. And we've got good teams working with Vice President Kamala Harris. And so we're hopeful that it doesn't play out again. But again, we cannot be relaxed on this. The stakes are high. The numbers are close, very close in you know, early voting numbers, mailing voting numbers. And so anything can happen at this point. And so every single vote is needed. Hopefully the Nigerians in the diaspora in the US that haven't voted are planning to go out and vote, and will go out and vote intelligently. You know, some of what Ms. Aderonke was talking about, it really is a matter of miseducation. Which is what we see here in Nigeria. When we miseducate our people, they take actions that could be to their detriment and the detriment of the country. And so even though you've heard so much negative rhetoric and the state, you know, the difference in the candidates is so clear, when we miseducate our people, they make the wrong choices. You know, we've heard of so many people. I think there was one very popular female in the United States, a musician and a sister of a musician from a family of musicians who made some negative comments about Vice President Kamala Harris. And it was very clear that it was a matter of miseducation. No one would ever have expected her to make the comments that she did in support of Trump, but she did because she was miseducated. And so we cannot take things for granted. We need to make sure that the right messages are sent when there is, you know, rhetoric that doesn't make any sense about people cooking, you know, cats and all of that in that particular city. We need to stand up against it and speak truth. Otherwise, we end up where we ended up with Hillary Clinton, and we definitely don't. The women's rights are, you know, significantly at stake here, and I know everyone is holding their chairs really tight and praying that we don't end up with Trump on that matter.
All right, I'm sticking with you, Dr. Aderonke. You know, a lot of times when you take a look at electoral systems across the world, countries seem to have a lot of peculiarities, you know, to them, how they decide to conduct their elections. So a lot of people all over the world, the electoral college votes still are confusing, because that you are able to garner so much votes would not mean that you would win unless the electoral college really favors you. Tell us more about this. How does it work really? 270 of them, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the Electoral College vote is not unique to the United States. I think we have the same in many other countries across the world, and the goal there is to make sure that that there is some checks and balances in terms of how the eventual results go. And it's understandable and it makes sense, and I think it's something that should be continued. But it's important for candidates as well to make sure that they are properly planning for electoral college votes early in advance. I think it's not something that can be underestimated. And I think that's what happened with Hillary, where we underestimated where we would get those electoral college votes from. We thought we were secure and ready to bring it home, and we got a surprise on the last day. And sadly, we were a little more confident with Hillary than we are now. I think because we've been bitten once, but this is going to be a tough one. I think there are seven swing states where anything can happen, and both parties are, doing their best, even in these last few hours, to try to make sure that they garner the support that they need to garner from there. But it's a lot at stake. And those states are pretty large states and are going to have a lot of impact on this. So several different things are put in place to make sure that there are checks and balances as people vote, and it's all to make sure that we get the right people in the office. But unfortunately, if we don't plan properly, we could lose it. And so, again, for those who are watching, we've got to vote, and everybody's got to vote, and we've got to make sure that we are educating people. Politics is difficult until you win. You don't win, and so hopefully we get enough electoral college votes this time around. But it's a little bit of a scary race.
I see your excitement and I see the interest that you have. I know that many Nigerians and many Africans indeed had the same kind of feeling when President Barack Obama was coming on board. The assumption was that this was a president that would be very friendly with Africa and supportive. But at the end of the day, it didn't look exactly like that, from what we saw. That's just, by the way. I'd like to ask you this, and I'd like also Dr. Adedeji to also respond to this. Can we just sit here and wish away the possibility of a Trump presidency again, given the fact that he has quite a huge followership? The last election, he had well over 65 million votes. I mean, can we just sit here and wish away the possibility of another Trump presidency?
We can't. Like I said, it's been neck and neck. So it's tight already, and it's going to be tight till the last. Hopefully, we get the results pretty quickly. I know that I'm hearing that some people are waiting to challenge the results if it doesn't fall in their favor. So we cannot wish it away. But this idea of Africa or Nigeria as it relates to U.S. elections and the play of the president that comes in, like I said, Kamala is really just a less risky vote for when we think about Africa and Nigeria. But we cannot fool ourselves to think that Africa is the number one priority of the United States. America is American, and they are for American and American interests only. If Nigeria's interests align with America's interests, then yes, there may be some favor there. But you have to remember that Americans are for Americans, number one, and everybody after that. That being said, I think Ms. Adedeji mentioned it. If we don't take ourselves seriously, no one will take us seriously. If we're not prepared for trade, if we're not prepared for export, if we're not a reliable country, we cannot expect that the United States will make us an important piece on their agenda. So we do need to clean house first. And if we are expecting to be treated with any dignity or any level of priority in the United States.
Thank you. Let's go to Dr. Aderonke at the moment. Doctor, we want to see this election through the eyes of Nigerians in the diaspora. Some of them, like Dr. Kujore, have dual citizenship, and so they can really talk to you about how they feel. How is Europe really perceiving the candidacy of both Kamala Harris of the Democrats and former President Donald Trump, who's on the side of the Republicans? What are they seeing? What are you saying?
Thank you for the question. I should say that the Europeans are scared. They do not want President Trump to come, because when he was in power, during his administration, it threatened, it really threatened the European Union countries, when it comes to NATO, North Atlantic NATO, the treaty organization. It threatened them that they should increase their defense spending. It wanted them to contribute more to their defense spending to NATO. And he said if they do not contribute more, the United States is going to withdraw from NATO. And that should mean definitely the end of NATO. Everybody knows that. So they are scared. At times, there are some particular products that are being exported to the United States from the European Union. They have this various economic contracts. President Trump will just come one day, increase the tariff, and say, we cannot be giving you things free of charge. We will increase this to a particular percentage, and you need to pay. So that will have effect on the production cost in Europe. So the European Union is very, very scared about the presidency of Donald Trump. Vice President Kamala Harris will be a softer, a more moderate, a more friendlier person, party to the interest of Europe, and so they are scared. They don't usually talk much about it. They analyze it on the television, but you can see that they are really, really, really afraid about the presidency of President Donald Trump. The United States is the largest economy in the world, $25 trillion. And the next one is China. So there is no other country that comes really close to this magnitude of economy that the U.S. possesses. So there's no country that will actually trade with the United States as the economic and military power of the world. So there's nothing you can do. And when they cough in the U.S., it affects Europe. So they are keen and watching closely who emerges as the winner of this election. The women especially, because women's rights are very strong, especially in Germany, where I live. Women tend to support Vice President Kamala Harris. They want to see a woman being the president of the United States. I myself would like to see.
Yes, if you can hear
Can you hear me?
If you can hear me, yes. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have to move because of time. I asked a question earlier on. I put a question to Dr. Kujore about the fact that can we indeed wish away a possible Trump presidency again, given the fact that regardless of all that you have said today, there's still a huge following for former President Donald Trump in the U.S. Did you hear me? All right. Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can get Dr. Kujore back with us on the show. We had a discussion before we brought on our resource persons today. Dr. Kujore, let's see if you're there. I asked earlier on regards to how Nigerians in diaspora, some of them with dual citizenship, would feel with regards to immigration. You've been able to respond one way or the other. Let's talk about other issues. Which of the candidates do those that you know that are very close to see as given best policies, developing best policies to grow America's economy?
Sure, I think undoubtedly it is Vice President Kamala Harris. I cannot wait to be able to call her President Kamala Harris. I think most people who are informed and educated definitely lean to Kamala because she is the most diplomatic I think what you see with Trump are just very rash decisions and no real care for the implications of the short-term decisions that he's making. So when you think about the economics and the financial markets and the longevity of the financial markets, there's definitely a lot of tension as people await the results, because the results will make a difference in the market. I think just earlier this week or late last week, we saw the lowest job growth since 2020 in the US, and it's primarily because a lot of corporations, a lot of people are nervous about what's going to happen from an economic perspective. I'll go back to Nigeria for a second here. I think it's important to note, as we look at it from a larger perspective, Nigeria is low on the totem pole. But it's important to think about Nigerians in the diaspora in the US in particular, and their impact on the Nigerian economy when it comes to remittances. If the US economy is not strengthened, if the US economy shifts and becomes volatile, that would definitely significantly impact Nigeria and the remittances that are able to flow into the country, because it is when the US is thriving, that its people, its Nigerians, the Nigerians in the diaspora have that excess income that they're able to sort of push into Nigeria through remittances. So a couple of things to think about there when it comes to Nigeria.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me ask you about collaborations from other political parties. For example, in Nigeria here, the build up to elections, we have so-called smaller parties, declaring their support. So tell us about what we're getting from other political parties and voting blocks in the US for each of these two candidates that we're talking about.
Sure. Unfortunately, I think it's the independents here in the U.S. are typically just trying to make name. They're trying to make sure that they are heard, that they are existent, and the only way to do it is by, affiliating with a party that usually doesn't end up winning the elections. The sad thing, though, is that as it does everywhere else, it splits the vote. And folks who, usually would be leaning Democratic because they are somewhat enlightened, end up in an independent party and reducing the votes for the Democratic Party. So it's not something that we are excited to see when people leaning that direction, because it just skews the numbers and gets us to where we don't want to be. But it is what it is. That's why every Democratic vote is important. That's why both candidates are, really running the last those seven states where we have a lot of swing voters to try to make sure that we get as many of them leaning one way or the other, as opposed to standing on the sidelines.
To talk about those swing states and how both candidates can get them in their favor in just a moment. Let me go now to Dr. Aderonke. United States is a very big country that every country of the world will want to hate or like, but it is what it is at the moment. Let's talk about this election and international relations. Right now, we have a war going on between Ukraine and Russia. We have Israel hitting hard on Gaza. Also in Lebanon, there are issues even in Asia where China could hit anywhere, anytime. So whoever emerges as a president of the United States from the election on November 5 will have a whole lot on his or her table. What is the world, especially in Europe, what are they looking forward to, and the possibilities that each of the candidates and main challengers at this point there could bring to the table in uniting the world, or maybe continuing with the wars?
That question alone is so controversial because of the way they have handled these wars and the situation in Gaza and the Ukrainian war, and the situation in Gaza also, having a spillover effect in and moving to other parts of the region, Lebanon, Iran, and because of the stance of President Donald Trump. It's somebody who says we don't want war, unilateralism, Americanism. We don't want globalism, America for itself. We are going to end this war. That might go well with so many people. I have friends here who are talking about it, experts who are talking about it, that President Trump is going to end this war. It's going to, because there won't be money for the Ukrainian war again. And when the United States does not give money, they spend billions of dollars. If they do not give any military assistance again, any financial assistance again, Europe cannot. Europe does not have the military capability for that. Only the United States. Europe does not have that kind of money. They are feeling it already. They have inflation as well. The economy is being battered. They feel it, and Russia is very close to them too, and they've gotten this historical antagonism, between, the Soviet Union and the European countries. So the election of President Trump it's a little, they are afraid. They do not want the government of this country. They do not say that. They do not want President Trump to come because of the Ukrainian war alone. Now going to the war in Gaza and the situation in the Middle East, it's another thing entirely, because President Trump is a solid defender of the state of Israel. And I was listening to Vice President Kamala Harris saying yesterday, which many people also want to hear, that, look, I will make sure that we end this war in Gaza, that we end this humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. President Trump has talked less about that. He has talked less about that, actually, and people know his stance on that. I personally, as an expert in this field, when it comes to genocide, I'm so disappointed, to be honest, in the position of the United States with respect to the Gaza war and the situation in the Middle East. The Israel has a right to assist. It's in the United States, a United Nations Charter that every country or any particular group has a right to assist. So as the Palestinians, they have a right to self-determination. Why should it be so difficult to give these people their statehood so that we have peace in the region? And we have conflict. You can see what's going on. When I see these babies being killed every day, it's unbelievable. And the way international humanitarian laws, international human rights laws are being violated. United Nations organs are being stopped from carrying out their activities. It's unbelievable.
Ademola Adedeji, who is a foreign relations expert, thank you so much indeed for your time on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
I also like to thank Dr. Aderonke Kujore, who is an American citizen and, of course, a voter who had voted and declared our votes. Thank you very much indeed for your time on the show today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
So I was looking forward to talking about the 7 battleground states that might decide the winner in this election, and that's referring to the